you're not careful, and you knock up out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the back rooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old, moist carpet, the madness of money yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum humbug, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering nearby, 'cause it sure as hell heard you. Hello, welcome to the Backrooms. On May 12, 2019, the user in 4chan made a thread asking for disquieting images that just feel off. This thread was where the infamous yellow offices of the Backrooms first appeared. On May 13, 2019, someone replied to this image with a copy-paste I read out at the beginning of this video, and thus began the Backrooms. The original concept, before the levels and the wikis and the games and the movie, was built on the discomforting horror of liminal space. The human psyche, for the most part, thrives in routine and familiarity. It's why uncertainty is such a big fear for most people, even when they don't recognize that their actions are being driven by that fear. The mind instantly catalogs things as it processes information, sorts out the is and isn't, the shoulds and shouldn't be's. It thrives with patterns. When there is a pattern break, when something is missing, when something looks mostly the same but there's just a few elements off, the brain signals danger. It's survival, hardwired into a conscious creature's biology. The unsettling feeling an unoccupied liminal space brings is the result of a mind sensing a pattern break. Locational uncanny valley. Beyond the liminal aspect, the original copy-pasta mentions something auditory, but not visual, which leaves the mind to wander and make up whatever it fears most. But even if one were to enter the backrooms and never find threats, the mind is not made for isolation. The silence, the endless halls of sickly pus yellow, the never-ending walk. If the mind doesn't cave from the horrors itself generates, then it will be crushed by brute force. As such, the horror of the backrooms has always been psychological. Whether or not it's better for an adaptation to remain psychological and to include monsters is a subjective debate, but the fact remains that psychological horror is buried into the foundation of the backrooms concept. This fact, or the rejection of it, has caused massive debate across the backrooms fandom and its various factions. Some want the backrooms to be psychological horror, others want the backrooms to be survival horror. The movie, surprisingly, doesn't hitch its post to just one viewpoint, but instead takes elements from both. The film opens with a scene straight out of the Kane Pixels' original Backrooms series, a found footage clip of a researcher in a hazmat suit, navigating the backrooms. The sickly yellow office setting looks like every sad abandoned building interior you've ever seen. There's clearly something inherently wrong with its atmosphere that warrants the hazmat. The researcher is lost. He's split off from the group. Maybe he was isolated on purpose. Either way, something finds him and his footage cuts out. The async observation crew watch this impassively on their monitor. After that cold open, the plot properly begins. The film is split into two parts, Clark's and Mary's. Clark's portion takes up the first hour of the film. Clark is a furniture store owner, which is a cool shout-out to the original Backrooms photo being an empty furniture store. He's got marital problems, and his business is failing. His wife left him, or, in his words, he was kicked out of his house. The phrasing here is deliberate, and marks where each character stands. Mary says that Clark's wife left him. The blame is placed on his shoulders, and the leaving is consequence. Clark says he was kicked out of his house. The blame is placed on his wife, and the injustice was done to him. Regardless, because he no longer has a house, Clark sleeps in his furniture store. Clark is a troubled man. He's an alcoholic. He has financial troubles. He's isolated from people because he constantly pushes them away. He has a temper. He's a bit awkward and clumsy. His frustration with his finances and his house is understandable. While trying to figure out what's been causing the blackouts and power surges in the store, Clark and his electrician discover that something's wrong with the breaker in the basement. Some of the switches aren't wired right. They're kind of just slapped on there, and some of them aren't even connected. A miswired brain with misfiring synapses. Electricity running into the wrong places. There's not really anything Clark can do about it but turn off some of the unnecessary switches and hope for the best. Unfortunately, the power surges keep happening, and one night, while Clark is investigating the breaker, he discovers a spot in the wall of the basement where he can just phase through. The null zone. On the other side of the null zone, on the other side of the wall, is the endless office world of the Backrooms. Clark explores the Backrooms and slowly becomes obsessed with it, to the point where he brings his discovery up to his therapist, Mary. He talks of its endless halls, the doors that lead to nowhere, the sudden inclines and the sharp drops, furniture piled up in random heaps. Mary is skeptical, and Clark, offended at her skepticism, vows to come back with proof. He then recruits his two employees, Kat and Bobby, to go into the backrooms with him to help record his research. While they're in the backrooms, Bobby gets pulled down a shaft and killed by something that only appears briefly on screen. Kat and Clark get separated, with Clark accidentally wandering into other rooms. Eventually, they manage to talk to each other through a wall, but something off camera finds Clark first. Throughout Clark's entire journey into the backrooms, Async has been conducting research in the area. They're also aware of him. They've seen him on the cameras. They do nothing to assist or move him. We then switch to the second portion of the film, Mary's. She's a therapist, one with a troubled childhood due to her paranoid mother, who would barricade the house and never let her out, believing the outside world to be dangerous. People who go into fields involving psychology often do so in an effort to understand themselves or work through things they've experienced growing up. It's common to want some semblance of control over something you never had a say in, even if you can only hold a shadow of it. It's also common for people who've gone through trauma to want to help others through theirs. Mary, as successful as she is, with her own practice and her own books, is still haunted by her childhood. Mothers do tend to pass their burdens onto their daughters, and Mary carries the weight of those, misshapen as they are, even into the present day. Mary hallucinates her mother even when she's not really there. She dreams of her. Her career choices because of her. Mary's just all the decisions her mother made, given consciousness and left untethered to exist. When Clark leaves a disturbing message about finding a window and going through it, then misses his appointments, Mary goes looking for him. She visits his furniture store and finds the entrance to the backrooms. The version of it she finds is slightly different. For one, there should be furniture piled up in the middle of the floor when you enter. The floor is now empty. For another, one of the halls Mary goes down now has a crayon mural depicting a large figure wreaking havoc and killing people. Clark later appears, hiding behind a wall. When Mary asks him what the backrooms are, he tells her that it's every place that's ever been. They hear a noise down the hall, and Clark tells her to stay calm because it's only him, and she knows him, before he chokes her and she passes out. When Mary wakes up, she's sitting at a dining room setup, most likely where all the furniture in the initial room was moved to. She's tied to a chair, and Clark's setting the table. There are 3 other people in the room, or 3 impressions of people, at least. They're misshapen. The faces smeared like reflections on wet glass, their eyes too many. The backrooms, it turns out, is a place heavily reliant on memory, a place of emotion, of people. That's why it's every place that's ever been. It's the topographical cache drive of the universe. For every place that's ever existed, there is a memory of it in the backrooms. Multiple memories, even. It doesn't matter whether or not the place still exists in the real world. In the backrooms, if it was, then it is. Location holds memory. That's how desire paths are formed. The earth remembers where people prefer to tread, and so grass doesn't grow there. Rock formations remember the wave crashing into them over and over, and they reshape themselves into cliffs. There's a darkened patch of ground right outside my house, where a neighbor once hacked someone's spine out with a machete. No matter the sun and the storms, the blood never seems to wash out. The ground still remembers the violence, like it holds on to it and refuses to let go. The backrooms remembers people too, just vaguely, in concepts rather than beings. It remembers the general shape of them, their Jungian shadow. It's no different from how the human brain remembers things, really. Did you know that memory is a reconstructive process? It's prone to distortion because of it. Every time you recall something, your brain reconsolidates it, and whatever new information you now associate with it affects it. It's no different from those test papers our teachers give us, where their copy is pristine and in color, but because the ones we have are copies of copies of copies of copies, all we're left with is an illegible mass of black ink that more resembles a Rorschach test than a diagram of a cell. A professor of mine once described every instance of remembering as the brain retrieving the memory of a memory. That's why the still lives in the backrooms are stiff, uncanny, and feeling, why they move in bursts and spend hours in moving, why they only act when you're not paying attention. Clark has gone off the deep end. He talks about the still life's inability to feel pain, and he seems quite delighted about it. It's also implied to have been eating them this whole time, which is why he's been able to survive in the backrooms for as long as he has. When he opens the fridge, Mary sees Kat's decapitated head. Clark puts Mary through a therapy exercise she used in one of their sessions. It's one where they role-play the night his wife left him, the night he got kicked out of his house. He wants her to tell him that he was right in his frustrations and none of it was his fault. He goes as far as to scalp one of the still lives and place a red hair on Mary's head, so she looks more like his wife. One of the reasons why violent offenders commit their crimes is displacement. It's what happens when someone with violent tendencies, for one reason or another, is unable to place that violence on their intended targets. It's most common with offenders with avoidant tendencies or offenders with severe childhood trauma. They can't bring themselves to confront the people they actually want to hurt because they're scared, so they displace their anger on others to remind them of their actual target. This is also why some serial killers do the serial part of the killing. They get momentary satisfaction from killing a stand-in, but the real thing is still out there, still fueling the desire to kill, so they displace again and again and again. Clark, as was established in the beginning of the movie, pushes people away. He runs away from everything, really, not just people. Responsibility, confrontation, blame. He runs from all of it. Displacement is just another form of running away, just a very lethal iteration of it. So he's displacing on Mary, forcing her to take on the role of his wife while he screams and rages and points a knife at her. Mary eventually snaps and tells him that the reason why his wife left him was because of his inability to confront his own mistakes, and that this cycle of running and hurting people only keeps getting worse because he never does anything to fix it. He has his traumas and his mental health issues, but at the end of the day, his actions are his responsibilities, and he keeps returning to the same habits. He keeps returning to the backrooms. Clark admits to her that he doesn't want to change. He's comfortable where he is, with how he's living, surrounded by approximations of people, lost in a maze of memory, isolated, alone, far from consequence. Mary tells him he doesn't have to change then. He can stay right where he is, but he doesn't have to drag her down with him. He doesn't have to use her as a scapegoat for his anger. She, in turn, though she went into her profession to help people, accepts that she can't save everyone. Clark agrees to let her go, but some corrupted alternate of him, in the form of the pirate persona he uses to advertise his shop, steps into the room. There are many iterations of the self. There's you as you are, you as you think you are, you as you think people think you are, you as a specific person views you, and so on and so forth. Clearly, the Backrooms places all these selves in one tangible space. The pirate is a recollection of Clark and violence, and terror. It's looming and intimidating. It doesn't speak, just destroys and consumes. Who knows if the Clark we see in the second half of the movie is the same one we see in the first? Who knows what happened to the real one if this is the case? Who knows where the pirate spawned from? From Clark's own mind, from an amalgamation of everyone he's ever hurt, from Mary, from his wife, from the world's summation of his rage. The Backrooms remembers people in fragments. Clark tries to placate the pirate in despairing Mary, but the pirate doesn't listen. Grabs Clark and devours him, the same way Clark has been devouring the still lives in the Backrooms. People are something to consume. People are something to feed an inadequacy. One part of someone devouring another. Madness consuming a man. Mary frees herself from her chair and runs. She navigates the maze of the Backrooms until she finds a door that leads to a replica of Clark's furniture store. The pirate catches her there, but she bashes his head in with a chunk of concrete from her childhood home. She's been carrying it around for the whole film, a piece of cement with her handprint from when she was a child. Her childhood has shaped so much of her present life, as it does all of us, and though it was painful, she looks at this little piece of rock fondly. But it's still the past, still a piece of something she remembers in pieces. She smashes it against the facsimile of a patient to get away from him. She finds a gap small enough to fit her, but not the pirate, and slips through there. For a moment, she looks back at the pirate, still alive, still reaching for her. A fraction of someone she was treating before she decided she didn't have to save everyone. She escapes, and ends up by a group of async employees. They decontaminate her and bring her in for questioning. As they are, Mary asks what the company is and what they're doing. The employee questioning her explains that they're async, and they formerly produced MRI machines. These days, not so much. They research the Backrooms. They've been there themselves. Again, people who go into a profession because they want to understand themselves and the things they've been through. Mary asks where she is. She should be in the outside world already, but she's not quite sure. She didn't exit out of the real furniture store. She exited into a replica and slipped into another section. After that, she was taken straight into Async's facilities. She hasn't seen the outside world yet, and even if she does, how can she really be sure? The Backrooms remembers every place there is, How can she be sure that it's not just a scarily accurate memory of the outside world, or a memory of a memory that's just clear enough to be mistaken for the real thing? How does she know, even, if she's the real Mary, or if she's just a copy of the real thing? No matter the case, the Backrooms remembers her old house and the many forms of it as it decays over the years. Cats in Bobby's apartment, Clark's furniture store, Asink's interrogation room, Mary, still by the table. The Backrooms gets quite heavy-handed in its second half about what it's ultimately about, which I ain't mad at it. I ain't mad at it at all, especially in this climate of media incomprehension, learned helplessness, and, funnily enough, a topic the film covers, extreme ambivalence to personal responsibility and an unwillingness to progress. I am not mad at it. Do whatever you need to do to get the point across, I guess. That besides, it doesn't spell everything out. Because of the surreal nature of the film and the use of two unreliable narrators, however one reads the story depends on which angle you're viewing it from. The Backrooms itself is never explained, it's just placed there for an audience to dissect. It could be a real physical place, one that exacerbates whatever the worst traits of a person are. There's a reason for Asink's hazmat suits. Kat and Bobby were killed almost immediately after they set foot there, but Clark kept returning to the Backrooms night after night, and we don't know how long Mary was unconscious in there. Or maybe this is a madness of two, and we're only seeing the Backrooms because that's how Clark and Mary view the situation. Maybe there was never an eternal maze in the basement. Maybe the basement is just Clark's mental struggles given physical form, and he keeps returning to his more destructive urges. Mary tries to talk him away from it, but she fails. It devours him. Some part of her escapes, but she's become like her mother, forever questioning everything, forever paranoid. Maybe Mary never made it out at all. Maybe the ending is just that still life of her, in the Backrooms hallucinating a way out. Maybe that's all the still lives are doing, mentally trying to construct a future where they're physically stuck in the past. Maybe there is a place for reality's memories to go, keep running around in, a flat view of reality if you're at a high enough perch to view it. Some place that carries all that was, is, and will be. Some place where you can see your birth, your present, and your death, all at the same time. The many versions of you that exist in people's heads, in your own head over the years, and the most accurate way you can be summarized, all wandering lost in those holes. Maybe this is all the struggle of one person trying to make sense of themselves, with the id, ego, and superego given form. Maybe this is purgatory. Maybe this is hell. There are plenty of ways to read the characters due to how unreliable they are as narrators. When we enter the story, Clark's already in therapy and already out of this house. If his retelling of events isn't accurate due to his inability to accept responsibility, then throughout the film, he's stuck in a victim mentality. However, if his retelling of events is accurate and the situation is more nuanced, Clark's frustration with his financial problems and getting kicked out of the house he owns then isn't unreasonable. He's an architect stuck selling furniture because he needs quick cash to keep supporting his wife's education. He wants children and is trying to plan accordingly. He bought the house, it's in his name, and he now doesn't have access to it. Who on earth wouldn't be mad? There's also extreme racial implications to this. His wife is a white woman who now lives in a house he owns and paid for, who kicked him out of it. And for his therapist, another white woman, to wear the event as his wife leaving him when he's the one who now has to sleep at his furniture store. That's more than frustrating. His descent into madness becomes more than just a man who can't confront his problems. He's someone whose problems have been dismissed for so long. His defense mechanism of pushing people away has mutated into something toxic, extreme rejection of everything, including disregard for other people's lives. Reading Mary also depends on what part of her perspective we inspect. She's someone who's grown up with a mentally ill mother, and who's suffered because of it. If we read Mary, with Clark's retelling as him wallowing in his victim mentality, and Mary as someone taking the brunt of it, trying to help anyway before she realizes she can't save everyone, and doesn't have to save everyone, then she's a metaphor for breaking the cycle of abuse. This reading changes too, depending on how you view the ending. If you believe Mary escapes and the Backroom simply remembers her, then she's successful, though some part of the trauma still lingers. If you believe she's still in the Backrooms, just in a facility built inside by Async, then she's become paranoid like her mother. She tried to escape the cycle, but the experience has been too much, and she forever lives wary and stuck in it. However, if we read Mary with Clark's retelling being accurate, then it becomes that though Mary is someone trying to break an abusive cycle, she only sides with another form of abuse, one more systemic. This doesn't excuse Clark turning to murder, of course, but Mary contributes to a slide into madness. In the end, she's taken in and rescued by Asing for questioning, something they notably do not do with Clark, even though they're aware that he's in the backrooms. Mary's fate is unknown, but there's a lot to be said about the fact that a company involved in medicine attempts to give us some semblance of normalcy and assurance, but they let Clark take the full psychological brunt of the backrooms. Regardless, Mary and Clark are both fucked either way. Async doesn't care about them. Async barely cares about its workers. We saw that in the opening scene. Everyone is expendable in the name of progress. Interpretations about async are even more variable. It can be a metaphor for the United States healthcare system and their history of experimenting on black folks. A metaphor for the neglect and abuse the US healthcare system inflicts upon the general population, the rat race capitalism puts us through. Maybe it's an MRI machine gone wrong. Maybe the backrooms isn't actually happening in real time, but the presentation of an unreliable narrator who underwent experimental treatment by async, and who's experiencing the treatment as this descent into madness in an endless yellow office, a nightmare where they're not dreaming. I could talk for hours and hours of what the backrooms could be read as, and that's because the backrooms is one of those films where audience participation is a must. It's left a huge space for viewer perspective to fit in, and whatever a viewer brings to the table, their knowledge, their opinions, their experiences, that changes the reading they have. Every copy of the backrooms is personalized. I think it's a fantastic debut film for a young director. I appreciate all the Easter eggs scattered around it, especially the pool rooms, since I thought we were staying strictly in the backrooms. And I appreciate that instead of the film just swinging one side or the other in terms of the psychological/survival horror divide, it instead chose to prioritize story. Medium affects how a story is told, and when a film adaptation fails to accept this or fails to capitalize on the advantages its medium gives it, we either end up with getting 90 minutes of an incoherent story sprinkled with Easter eggs and shoutouts, or something entirely different that just has a recognizable name. By prioritizing story, the Backrooms allows itself room to retain recognizability with the audience already familiar with it, and coherency to the audience not familiar with it. It's something you can watch without having to do a deep dive into what the hell the Backrooms concept is. And if you're a Backrooms fan, it's fun to see something done with the concept on the big screen. Personally, I've never been scared of the Backrooms concept. I've been very taken by it. I kind of thrive in empty liminal spaces. I used to deliberately go to liminal buildings really early or really late, or even sneak in when they're closed just so I can wander without people bothering me. I've always found empty liminal spaces peaceful. I used to even wander construction sites where the workers went home and explore abandoned buildings. I love wandering cemeteries when it's empty, especially the ones with the big fields. I ended up accidentally causing an urban legend around school because of it. Still, even though I've never found horror of it, it was great to see the Backrooms concept used in the way it was. So, I think Parsons has struck a good balance with what he's done here. I'm definitely rewatching once it goes into streaming or DVDs, since I've only watched this once while having a bad health week, so I wasn't as observant as I would have liked. Honestly, I'm still a little sick. I'm really glad that films like these have been getting more appreciation these days, because they did not appreciate my baby Jacob's Ladder when it came out. That bastard's ticket sales sunk on the second day, the second fucking day. And it's not even a bad film. It's the fucking grandfather of psychological horror cinema. It got a silent fucking hill. So many movies and games and books have been inspired by this movie. Backrooms, in the shape it is now, wouldn't be around if Jacob's Ladder didn't exist first. That's your grandpa, and it tanked. People were so ungrateful back in the 90s, they couldn't appreciate peak. Fuck you. I'm glad the modern mainstream audience likes surreal psychological horror now. I'm so fucking happy. Also, can I just say, the cinematography of this film is stunning. The constant wide shots give a sense of space, the color grading making it so even when a set has furniture or buildings, the character still visually pops out. Characters standing framed by multiple doorways at once. It's so lovely. It's so beautiful. It really hammers in the isolation. I love it. I love it. I think a back-to-back feature of Ian Lung in the Backrooms while inebriated would be hilarious. One film's incredibly claustrophobic, with the character always close to the camera. Another's incredibly spacious, with the characters dwarfed by the rooms around them. I think it would literally change someone's brain chemistry. It'd be like a jerry-rigged salvia trip. Anyway, in conclusion, we're about to get live-action Borosca, including Part 5, and it's about to be fucking awful.